Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, yet still sinking? What if the very thing you keep trying to fix is the very thing God is asking you to release? And what if peace isn't found in doing more, but in surrendering all? There comes a point in every life, every soul, when the weight becomes unbearable. Like a storm swelling at sea, the pressure crashes in, relentless. You lie awake, staring into the ceiling, eyes open, heart heavy, your mind racing with one terrifying question: how am I supposed to survive this? In public, you smile, you laugh, you go through the motions, but inside, your spirit is unraveling. You're drained, emotionally threadbare, trying to hold it all together, planning your way out, strategizing every possible outcome. And yet, the more you try to take control, the more everything slips through your fingers. But here's the truth that changed everything for me, and it might change everything for you too. Give it to God, and stop worrying. This is not just a cliche. It's not weakness. It's not blind surrender. This is the key to your breakthrough. The path to real peace, the turning point where restoration begins. Because when you give it to God, you're not giving up. You're rising up. You're laying down fragile control for the hands that never fail. You are placing your burden before the one who calms storms with a whisper, the one who split the seas, the one who holds galaxies in motion without strain. And when you truly give it over to him, you're saying with your whole heart, I trust you more than I trust myself. I believe you can do what I cannot. I'm not surrendering in fear. I'm surrendering in faith. We live in a culture that glorifies hustle and hustle, while silence and surrender are mistaken for weakness. But hurry has become our unseen sickness. We're addicted to control. We obsess over every detail, chasing outcomes as if we can fix what's broken through sheer effort. But worry is a thief. It robs you of time, it steals your joy, it hijacks your focus, it drains your soul into fears that usually never even come to pass. And God, He never asked your heart to carry the entire world. He asked your heart to trust Him with it. What if the very thing you're fighting is the very lesson God's trying to teach you? What if the delay isn't a denial, but a divine discipline, meant to grow you, not break you? What if your worry is the very wall standing between you and your breakthrough? You cannot move forward if your hands are clinging to fear. You cannot walk the path God has set for you if your mind is running in anxious circles. At some point, you must choose. Will I keep managing everything alone? Or will I give everything to the one who already knows the outcome? God is not your last resort. He is not plan B. He's not waiting at the finish line hoping you survive the chaos. He's been calling you from the start, waiting for you to release it before it crushes you, before it drowns you, before you reach the end of yourself. And right now, in this very moment, God is listening. The answer isn't in another strategy. The solution isn't in more strength. The power lies in surrender. Not a shallow surrender that leaves you stuck, but a soul-deep surrender that ignites something unshakable. Because when you give it to God, He fights your battles. Some will say, but if I stop worrying, I'll lose control. But friend, here's the truth. You were never in control to begin with. That's the illusion. You were juggling the details, trying to map out every possibility, living in a loop of what-ifs. But the future has never been in your hands. It has always been in His. God holds tomorrow. He shapes destinies in silence. He moves mountains without announcement. And He never sleeps. He never stumbles. He never scrambles for a backup plan. Let me ask you, has worry ever solved anything? Has stress ever opened a door? Has anxiety ever healed what was broken? No, it only drains you, distracts you, and distances you from the peace that's already waiting. That's why surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. So when you say, God, I give this to you, you're not giving up control. You're acknowledging that you never needed it to begin with. You're letting go of the illusion. You're finally breathing again. You might be standing in the middle of a crisis right now. Financial stress, family tension, emotional torment. You might feel like everything you built is falling apart, one piece at a time. But here's the promise that changes the entire story. If you give it to God, what's falling apart in your life will fall into place in His hands. And this is just the beginning of what happens when you stop striving and start surrendering. Now, let's go deeper, into the moment you finally let go, and what God does next. You may feel like everything you've worked for, every plan, every hope, every piece of progress is slowly falling apart right before your eyes. But here's the unshakable promise. If you give it to God, what's falling apart in your life will fall perfectly into place in His hands. God is not alarmed by the size of your storm. He's not threatened by how deep your despair goes. He's not discouraged by your weakness or overwhelmed by your chaos. No matter how broken you feel, no matter how far gone your situation seems, you are never beyond the reach of His healing hand. When you stop clinging to worry and begin choosing trust, you'll witness something sacred. The unseen hand of God moving in ways you couldn't have planned, predicted, or performed on your own. Because the truth is, you cannot hold on to worry and faith at the same time. One will always push the other out. If your heart is filled with fear, faith has no room to take root. But when you let go of fear, when you intentionally push worry aside, you create space, and that space becomes a sanctuary. A place where miracles can begin, where divine timing aligns in your favor, where wisdom flows, where peace that surpasses understanding begins to reign. You are not running out of time. God is orchestrating time for you. He's aligning moments you haven't yet walked into, and the access point is surrender, but not a rushed, robotic surrender. Not a quick prayer tossed in panic, a true surrender, a real pouring out from the deepest part of your soul. Tell God what scares you. Tell Him what steals your sleep. Tell Him what you've been battling in silence. Pour it all out until your soul feels lighter, until your burden has been emptied and your strength begins to return. Because He listens. He always listens. He's not far. He's closer than the air you breathe. He's not waiting on perfect prayers. He's waiting on an honest heart. And when you give it to Him, leave it there. Don't take it back tomorrow. Don't pray and then immediately spiral into panic again. Live like it's already handled. That's what faith looks like. That's what real surrender sounds like. Too many people pray but don't trust. They say, God, take this, and then live as if nothing changed. But true faith produces true rest. When you really believe God is in control, your steps slow down, your spirit settles. Your mind isn't in a frenzy anymore. You begin to walk like someone who knows heaven is behind every move. The secret to peace isn't the absence of problems, it's the presence of trust. You can have chaos all around you and still be calm inside if you've placed it all in God's hands. You can walk through fire and not be consumed if you know He walks with you. You can face enemies and still stand tall if you know God is your defender. You don't need to know all the answers, you just need to walk with the one who already has them. Here's a truth that will shake your soul. God honors trust. When you give it to Him, you're not just surrendering pain, you are planting a seed of faith. And faith doesn't stay buried, it grows, it blossoms, it brings fruit, it attracts favor, it positions you for blessings that can't be blocked. God never overlooks the heart that trusts Him. When you lay down your worry, He lifts up your future. When you choose peace over panic, He releases provision. And when you stop doubting, doors begin to swing open. Blessings that were waiting on your surrender start moving toward your life. All because you finally said, God, I don't know how, but I know you do. Worry has been lying to you. It's whispering worst-case scenarios. It's feeding you fear. It's convincing you that nothing will change, that you're on your own, that all hope is gone. But here's the truth. Worry is not prophetic. God is. Worry doesn't know the future. God wrote it. Even when pain is present, even when loss is real, even when delay feels endless, God is still working all things for your good. Don't confuse divine silence with divine absence. God is never absent. He is never confused. He is never late. You've tried everything else. Why not try surrender? You've worried, strategized, panicked, complained, Googled and cried. Now it's time to do the one thing that actually leads to peace. Let go. And not just once. Do it daily. Give it to God each morning before your feet hit the floor. Give it to Him again each night before you close your eyes. When anxious thoughts sneak in, hand them back. When fear whispers, respond with faith. When doubt knocks, open the door with trust. This is not a moment, it's a mindset. Not a one-time release, but a lifestyle of surrender. Because the secret isn't in doing more. The secret is in trusting more. And when you finally release it, when you truly stop worrying, you'll start to see the shift. Your sleep will come back. Your joy will increase, your relationships will strengthen, your energy will return. Why? Because God is now carrying what was crushing you. He's navigating what you couldn't figure out. He's solving problems you didn't even know were coming. His invisible hand is working in visible ways. And all of it started the moment you gave it to him. There's a difference between believing in God and trusting God. Many say they believe, few actually trust. But trust, real trust, goes deeper. It says, even when I don't see it, I know you're working. Even when it takes longer than I thought, I won't panic. Even when I feel afraid, I won't react out of fear. I will move by faith. That kind of trust, it moves heaven. It opens blessings, it silences fear. And it makes room for the voice of God to speak peace into every corner of your life. Because now you finally understand. Peace doesn't come from what you control. Peace comes from who you trust. And just ahead, we'll explore what happens when that kind of trust becomes your lifestyle, not just your emergency plan. When you truly begin to trust God, not just with your words but with your walk, something shifts. Your prayers no longer feel desperate. They feel anchored. Your soul begins to breathe again. Your steps slow down, not out of fear, but out of confidence. You move like someone who knows God is in control. Because the secret to lasting peace has never been about perfect conditions. It's always been about perfect surrender. You can have a storm raging outside and still be calm inside if you've truly given it all to God. You can walk through the fire and not be burned when you know He's walking with you. You can face betrayal, rejection, and fierce opposition and still stand strong when you know God is your defender. You don't need every answer. You only need the one who holds them. You don't need to figure it all out. You need to trust the one who already has. Here's the life-altering truth. God honors trust. When you lay your burdens at His feet, you're not just dropping pain, you're planting a seed of faith. And seeds don't stay buried. They rise, they grow, they bear fruit. Faith draws favor. Faith invites breakthrough. Faith brings the hand of God into places no human could reach. God does not overlook the heart that dares to trust Him. Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, yet still sinking? What if the very thing you keep trying to fix is the very thing God is asking you to release? And what if peace isn't found in doing more, but in surrendering all? There comes a point in every life, every soul, when the weight becomes unbearable. Like a storm swelling at sea, the pressure crashes in, relentless. You lie awake, staring into the ceiling, eyes open, heart heavy, your mind racing with one terrifying question: how am I supposed to survive this? In public, you smile, you laugh, you go through the motions. But inside, your spirit is unraveling. You're drained, emotionally threadbare, trying to hold it all together, planning your way out, strategizing every possible outcome. And yet, the more you try to take control, the more everything slips through your fingers. But here's the truth that changed everything for me, and it might change everything for you too. Give it to God and stop worrying. This is not just a cliche. It's not weakness. It's not blind surrender. This is the key to your breakthrough, the path to real peace, the turning point where restoration begins. Because when you give it to God, you're not giving up. You're rising up. You're laying down fragile control for the hands that never fail. You are placing your burden before the one who calms storms with a whisper, the one who split the seas, the one who holds galaxies in motion without strain. And when you truly give it over to Him, you're saying with your whole heart, I trust you more than I trust myself. I believe you can do what I cannot. I'm not surrendering in fear, I'm surrendering in faith. We live in a culture that glorifies hustle and hustle, while silence and surrender are mistaken for weakness. But hurry has become our unseen sickness. We're addicted to control. We obsess over every detail, chasing outcomes as if we can fix what's broken through sheer effort. But worry is a thief. It robs you of time. It steals your joy. It hijacks your focus. It drains your soul into fears that usually never even come to pass. And God, He never asked your heart to carry the entire world. He asked your heart to trust Him with it. What if the very thing you're fighting is the very lesson God's trying to teach you? What if the delay isn't a denial, but a divine discipline, meant to grow you, not break you? What if your worry is the very wall standing between you and your breakthrough? You cannot move forward if your hands are clinging to fear. You cannot walk the path God has set for you if your mind is running in anxious circles. At some point, you must choose. Will I keep managing everything alone? Or will I give everything to the one who already knows the outcome? God is not your last resort. He is not plan B. He's not waiting at the finish line hoping you survive the chaos. He's been calling you from the start, waiting for you to release it before it crushes you, before it drowns you, before you reach the end of yourself. And right now, in this very moment, God is listening. The answer isn't in another strategy. The solution isn't in more strength. The power lies in surrender. Not a shallow surrender that leaves you stuck, but a soul-deep surrender that ignites something unshakable. Because when you give it to God, He fights your battles. Some will say, but if I stop worrying, I'll lose control. But friend, here's the truth. You were never in control to begin with. That's the illusion. You were juggling the details, trying to map out every possibility, living in a loop of what-ifs. But the future has never been in your hands. It has always been in His. God holds tomorrow. He shapes destinies in silence. He moves mountains without announcement. And He never sleeps, He never stumbles, He never scrambles for a backup plan. Let me ask you, has worry ever solved anything? Has stress ever opened a door? Has anxiety ever healed what was broken? No. It only drains you, distracts you, and distances you from the peace that's already waiting. That's why surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. So when you say, God, I give this to you, you're not giving up control. You're acknowledging that you never needed it to begin with. You're letting go of the illusion. You're finally breathing again. You might be standing in the middle of a crisis right now. Financial stress, family tension, emotional torment. You might feel like everything you built is falling apart, one piece at a time. But here's the promise that changes the entire story. If you give it to God, what's falling apart in your life will fall into place in His hands. And this is just the beginning of what happens when you stop striving and start surrendering. Now let's go deeper, into the moment you finally let go, and what God does next. He is in the waiting, He is in the breaking, He is in the rebuilding, He is in every breath you take when you feel like you're barely holding on. And if you just loosen your grip on what you were never meant to carry, you'd feel His strength holding you together. There is a freedom, a divine freedom that is unlocked the moment you finally let go. It changes how you speak, it changes how you walk, it changes how you think. Because you're no longer preparing for disaster. You're expecting God's goodness, and the best part? You don't have to chase peace anymore. You simply choose it, by releasing the weight and placing it into the hands that never fail. So next time life presses in with urgency, don't let it push you into panic. Let it pull you deeper into the presence of the one who already holds the answer. And from that place comes transformation. And when you finally choose to live from that anchored stillness, not from panic, but from presence, everything starts to change. Not all at once, not always visibly, but deeply, quietly, unmistakably. You begin to realize you don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to control all the outcomes. You simply need the courage to surrender. Surrender your plans. Surrender your timelines. Surrender the lie that says you have to keep it all together. Because in that surrender, you'll find a strength no struggle can shatter. A wisdom no worry can rival. A peace no pressure can pierce. God is not just with you when you're winning. He's with you when you're weeping. He's there in the silence, in the breakdowns you never speak of, in the cries you whisper at midnight when no one else hears. And He responds, not to your performance, but to your release. Because God moves when you move out of the way. The more you release, the more He reveals. The more you trust, the more He transforms. Your breakthrough isn't locked behind more effort, it's waiting behind surrender. So give it to God, all of it, not just the big things, not just the problems too heavy to solve, but the tiny thoughts that steal your peace, the silent fears that wear you down, the hidden expectations you cling to. Hand them over. Let God carry what was never meant to live in your hands. This is the secret so many overlook. While running in circles, trapped in stress and striving, this is the secret that unlocks heaven's help. It's the key that opens doors no man can close. The light that breaks into your darkest moments. The strength that lifts you when you have no breath left to stand. Give it to God. Stop worrying and just watch what happens. Heaven responds to a heart fully surrendered. So many are battling wars within the mind, fighting storms that no one else can see. On the outside, things look normal, but inside, there's a silent war between fear and faith, between anxiety and trust, between trying to control and learning to let go. But today, hear this with clarity and conviction. The storm inside you will not subside until you finally say, God, I give it all to you. Not just the broken parts, not just the fears you can't handle, but everything. Your thoughts, your outcomes, your expectations, your future, all of it. It takes boldness to let go. It takes courage to unclench your grip. It takes faith to say, even though I don't understand, I still trust you. And that kind of faith isn't found in noise or chaos. It's found in stillness. In the quiet place where your soul kneels before God and whispers, I can't carry this anymore, and I don't have to. Do you know what kind of freedom that unlocks? When you finally come to the end of your own strength, that's when God's strength begins to rise. That's when the fog lifts. That's when your eyes open, not in panic, but in power. Because worry narrows your vision. It zooms in on what's wrong. It traps you in delay, deficiency, and doubt. But surrender? Surrender clears your view. You start to see beyond what's missing. You begin to sense divine timing behind the setbacks. You recognize that what didn't work out was actually protection. That the rejection wasn't failure, it was redirection. That the delays weren't punishment, they were preparation. But you can't see it until you let go of fear. When you lay it all down at the feet of God, something powerful begins to rise. Clarity. And hear this. God doesn't just take your burden, He transforms it. The thing that tormented you becomes the thing that testifies through you. What once brought pain becomes the platform for your purpose. But that only happens when your hands are open, not clenched, not grasping, not controlling. Surrender is the higher road. It's the path where your spirit leads, not your emotions. It's the place where decisions are made through faith, not fear. It's where God's unchanging character becomes your compass, not your circumstances. God isn't moved by panic. He's moved by faith. The moment you shift from anxiety to assurance, you invite heaven to move. And don't be surprised if God doesn't answer the way you expected. Because sometimes the miracle isn't in the quick fix. It's in the transformation of your inner being. Sometimes He allows the storm to continue, so that your roots grow deeper, so that your dependence is no longer on your ability, but on His sufficiency. Because the peace you've been searching for, it's not found in something around you, it's found in something within you. And it starts with one choice: full release. Too many are walking through life with clenched fists, gripping timelines, fears, expectations. But God responds to open hands, to a surrendered heart. When you say, God, take this pressure, take this pain, take this need, take this future, you are saying, I trust you more than I trust myself. And when that level of trust is released, the atmosphere shifts. Not always with thunder, not always with fireworks, but with stillness. A deep, quiet, unshakable stillness that settles your soul even while the world spins around you. And don't let the enemy lie to you. Don't let him convince you that surrender is weakness, that giving it to God is giving up. It's not giving up, it's going up, it's rising above fear. It's refusing to be reduced by anxiety. It's choosing to rest in the strength of the Almighty. There is a dignity in surrender. There is majesty in humility. And when you empty yourself of control, and when your hands are finally empty, when your soul lets go of fear, control, and striving, God begins to fill you with a peace that doesn't just comfort, it anchors. You don't need all the answers, you don't need perfect understanding. What you need is the boldness to surrender. Surrender not just the parts that frustrate you, not just the problems too big to fix, but everything. Your thoughts, your fears, your outcomes, your expectations, all of it. Because that kind of surrender doesn't weaken you, it makes you unstoppable. It takes courage to unclench your hands. It takes faith to say, even though I don't understand, I will still trust you. And that kind of faith, it doesn't rise in chaos, it's born in quiet. In that sacred place where your soul bows low before God and finally admits, I can't carry this anymore, and I don't have to. That's where freedom begins, When you reach the end of your own strength, that's where God's strength begins to manifest. That's when the fog begins to lift. That's when your spiritual eyes begin to open, no longer seeing from a place of panic, but from a position of power. Because worry will always shrink your vision. It will cause you to obsess over what's wrong, what's missing, what's late. But when you give it to God, your sight expands. You begin to see beyond the surface. You begin to recognize the divine orchestration behind every delay, every rejection, every closed door. You begin to realize what didn't happen for you was God's protection. Who walked away was God's redirection. What felt like failure was God's preparation. But you'll only see it clearly when your mind is no longer clouded by fear and noise. And when you finally lay it all down at His feet, clarity begins to rise. Here's something deeper still. God doesn't just lift your burden, He transforms it. The pain that once tormented you becomes the very testimony that sets others free. The deepest wounds become the greatest platform for your purpose. But none of that happens with closed fists. You must open your hands. You must walk the higher road, where your spirit leads and your emotions follow, where your choices are no longer shaped by panic, but by faith in God's unshakable character. Because God doesn't respond to panic, He responds to faith. The moment you shift from anxiety to assurance, you open the door to divine intervention. And here's the beautiful twist. That intervention may not come as a sudden miracle. Sometimes it looks like transformation, not of your situation, but of your soul. Sometimes God lets the storm keep roaring, not to harm you, but to deepen your roots. So your dependence isn't in your skill or your strength, but in His sufficiency. Because the peace you've been searching for, it was never waiting around you. It's been waiting within you. And it begins with full release. Too many live with clenched fists, gripping control, gripping timelines, gripping outcomes. But God doesn't respond to a tight grip. He responds to open palms. When you say, God, take this pain, take this pressure, take this future, take this burden, what you're really saying is, I trust you more than I trust myself. And when that level of trust is finally released, heaven responds. Not always with signs and wonders, but often with something far deeper, a stillness. An unshakable calm that becomes your anchor in the chaos. Even when everything around you feels unstable, you remain steady. And don't let the enemy trick you into thinking surrender is defeat. It is not giving up. It's going up. It's elevation. It's saying, I refuse to live beneath fear. I won't be driven by anxiety. I will rise, and I will rest in God's power. There is dignity in surrender. There is majesty in humility. And when you empty your heart of worry, God fills you with wisdom. Not the kind you learn in textbooks, not even the kind experience alone can teach, but heaven-born wisdom that flows straight from the throne room of grace. Some of you are still carrying what was never yours to carry. You inherited fear. You absorbed anxiety. You learned to worry from people who never learned how to trust. But hear me, that cycle can be broken today. God is not asking you to carry generational fear. He's inviting you to carry faith. He's calling you to rise above yesterday's weight and walk forward in the power of divine trust. You may say, but I've been hurt too many times. I've trusted before and been disappointed. I hear you, but trusting in God is not the same as trusting in man. People may fail, circumstances may shake, but God, He does not fail. He does not abandon, He does not change. And here's a truth that will reset your thinking. Worry is worship pointed in the wrong direction. When you worry, you're giving more attention, more belief to the power of the problem than to the power of God. But when you surrender, your worship returns to where it belongs. You start magnifying God, not your fear. You start lifting Him higher than the mountain in front of you. You start seeing breakthrough, not because the problem vanished, but because your focus shifted. God doesn't need to be convinced to care. He already does. You don't have to beg Him to notice. He already sees. But what He's waiting for is your surrender, your invitation. The moment you say, God, I give this to you, you open the gates to divine strategy, divine alignment, and divine peace. This isn't emotional hype, it's spiritual reality. You really can choose peace over panic. You can choose trust over torment. You can choose rest over wrestling. But it all begins with surrender. Not halfway, not partial, not temporary, total. Because anything less still gives fear a foothold. And fear tolerated is faith contaminated. You can't serve two masters. Worry and worship can't coexist. One must leave. And when you choose to evict worry, worship becomes your natural atmosphere. And when worship becomes your atmosphere, when worry no longer has a seat at the table, what fills that space is something sacred: stillness. Don't underestimate the power of silence before God. Don't mistake stillness for weakness. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be still and know God is in control. No more frantic planning, no more restless grasping, just stillness, just trust, just the quiet strength of a soul anchored in divine sovereignty. Because in that stillness you begin to hear what the noise once drowned out. You receive what striving never made room for. You understand what you could never figure out on your own. And when you begin to live from that place of settled trust, you become unshakable. The winds may blow, the storms may come, but you are no longer tossed about because you're not grounded in your own ability. You're grounded in the character of God. You've handed it over. You've stepped aside, and you've allowed God to take his rightful place in your life, not as your last resort, not as your backup plan, but as sovereign Lord. And in that moment, heaven aligns. The weight lifts. The confusion clears. The path begins to unfold. Because here's the truth. The more you try to hold everything together by sheer will, the more life reminds you, you're not the author, you're not the architect, you're not the one writing the blueprint. God is. And as long as you live like everything depends on your effort, you'll stay trapped in the exhausting cycle of overthinking, overworking, overstressing, yet still coming up empty. That is not the life God created you for. He didn't design you to collapse under pressure. He designed you to flourish under his care. But flourishing requires something most people resist: trust. You can't thrive if you won't surrender. You can't receive rest if you refuse to release control. The roots of peace do not grow in the soil of control. They grow deep in the soil of surrender. And surrender is not a feeling, it's a decision. You don't wait until you feel ready to give it to God. You create that moment. You draw a line in the sand and say, enough. I will no longer be a prisoner to fear. I will no longer let anxiety dictate my story. Today I give every worry, every doubt, every burden to God. And when you do, truly do, something supernatural happens. You'll feel the invisible weight lift. You'll sense the storm inside you begin to quiet. You'll experience a peace that doesn't come from circumstances, it comes from surrender. Because the human heart was never designed to carry the stress of tomorrow. That's why God gives you strength for today, not panic for what might come next. But so often, we fill our minds with what-ifs. What if this fails? What if I lose everything? What if it never gets better? But let me ask you, what if you gave it to God? What if you stopped trying to control what only He can change? What if you laid it down at His feet and finally let Him carry it? That's not weakness. That's wisdom. See, some people think that trusting God means life will suddenly get easier, but it's not about the storm vanishing, it's about the storm losing its power over you. The winds may still blow, the waves may still crash, but you will no longer be shaken. Why? Because your strength is no longer in yourself, it's rooted in your surrender. And here's the powerful truth. God is never closer than when you need Him most. When you stop obsessing over the size of the problem and start focusing on the size of your God, something shifts inside of you. Worry loses its grip, panic loses its voice, peace steps in. Don't let the noise of this world lead your soul. We live in a culture of chaos, shouting, scrolling, selling, rushing. But your soul was never meant to be led by noise. Your soul was made to be led by God. And God doesn't shout over your stress, He speaks in the stillness. So shut the door on the chaos. Shut the door on the lies that whisper you'll never make it. Shut the door on the voice that says, God has forgotten you. And listen, deeply, still, in faith. Because when you give it to God, He begins to speak, not always in thunder, but often in a whisper. And one word from God in silence can do more than 1,000 anxious thoughts ever could. There is a sacred rhythm to a surrendered life. It's not passivity, it's not apathy. It's powerful dependence. It's waking up each day and saying, God, lead me. I don't know what's coming, but I know You go before me. And nothing I face today is beyond Your wisdom or outside of Your control. That's the life that pleases God. That's the posture that attracts peace. Because when your heart is fully surrendered, God begins to unlock things in your life that effort alone could never earn. Doors open, clarity comes, provision flows. Not because you chased them, but because you made room for them through surrender. Because here's the principle. When you worry, your hands are closed. But when you surrender, your hands are open. And only open hands can receive what heaven wants to give. Too often we're holding on so tightly to our fears, our timelines, our logic, that there's no room left for divine provision. We pray for peace, but our grip is so tight, peace has no place to land. So release it, let it go, hand it over to God, not as a loan you'll take back when things get rough, but as a final act of trust. Say, God, I trust you with the outcome, no matter what it looks like. That kind of trust doesn't come from shallow religion. It comes from deep relationship, from knowing who God is, merciful, wise, compassionate, constant, from remembering every time He's already come through for you. So pause, reflect. How many times has God already shown up for you? When you remember all the times God has carried you before, it becomes easier to trust that He will carry you again. Stillness becomes sacred, silence becomes strength. And the surrendered life becomes your greatest posture of peace. Because when you give it to God, He will begin to speak. Not always in thunder, not always in dramatic signs, but often in a whisper. And one whisper from God can silence 1,000 anxious thoughts. There's a sacred rhythm to a surrendered life. It's not passivity. It's not giving up. It's powerful dependence. It's waking up every morning with the same prayer. God, lead me. I don't know what today holds, but I trust that you go before me. I trust that nothing I encounter today will catch you off guard. That kind of trust pleases God. That kind of posture invites supernatural peace. And when your heart is positioned in total trust, something divine begins to unfold. Doors open, clarity returns, provision flows, not because you forced it, not because you earned it, but because you made room for it by getting out of the way. Because when you worry, you clench your hands. When you surrender, you open them. And only open hands can receive what God is ready to give. Too often, we hold so tightly to our fears, our timelines, and our logic that there's no room left for divine provision. We say we want peace, but we're still holding the problem so tightly that peace has nowhere to land. So what's the answer? Release it. Let it go. Hand it over to God, not as a temporary trade, not as a nervous loan you'll take back tomorrow, but as a final holy act of trust. Say it with your full heart. God, I trust you with the outcome, no matter what it looks like. And that level of trust, it doesn't come from shallow belief. It's born from deep relationship, from knowing who God is, merciful, just, wise, compassionate, and sovereign. It's born from remembering the times He protected you from dangers you didn't even see, the times He moved behind the scenes while you wept in the dark, the moments you thought it was over, but here you are, still breathing. That means He's not finished with you. He has more for you. But to step into what's next, you must first release what's weighing you down. Because every time you give God your burden and then take it back, you're saying, I don't fully trust you yet. But when you truly leave it with Him, you're declaring, my confidence is in your sovereignty. My rest is in your presence. My peace is in your plan. That's where real strength is born. Not in striving, but in surrender. And when you live that way, daily, consistently, unapologetically, your spirit becomes unshakable. Not because life is perfect, but because your trust in God is deeper than the chaos around you. Now let me speak to the one who's afraid to let go, the one who's been trained to control. You've survived by managing every detail. Letting go feels like falling. But hear me in love. Letting go is not falling, it's flying. It's rising on wings of trust. It's being lifted by grace to places your plans could never take you. It's allowing the strength of God to carry you when your own strength runs dry. And once you taste that kind of surrender, you'll never want to go back to carrying the weight alone. Let God be your anchor when life starts shaking. Let Him be your compass when the road looks uncertain. Let Him be your provider when resources run low, your shield when you feel vulnerable, your guide when the path disappears into the fog. It all begins with one decision. I will not worry. I will give this to God, fully, finally, fearlessly. Because you don't need 1,000 answers. You just need one surrender. And once that surrender becomes the foundation of your daily life, everything begins to shift. The voices of fear, they lose their grip. The impulse to control, it begins to fade. You become someone new, calm in chaos. Strong in storms, still in the unknown. Not because you're stronger, but because your life is no longer built on your own ability. It's built on your unshakable trust in God. And that's the real secret. That's the quiet invitation being whispered to your spirit even now. Give it to God and stop worrying. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because now you're no longer walking alone. You're walking in peace. You're walking in confidence. You're walking with a heart that knows God is in control. There will still be moments where your thoughts rush in like a flood. Moments where your heart pounds and your chest tightens. Moments where your mind replays fear like a broken record. What if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if I never recover? But in those moments, remember, the greatest battle is not outside of you, it's within. And peace? Peace doesn't wait for the problem to disappear. Peace arrives the moment you place the problem in God's hands. God is not asking you to figure it all out. He's not expecting you to see the full map. He's simply asking you to trust, boldly, fully, and without hesitation. The weight you're carrying isn't proof of your strength. It's a call to surrender. And the longer you carry it alone, the heavier it becomes. But the very second you release it, everything begins to shift. Why? Because God's presence responds to trust like oxygen responds to flame. It ignites, it spreads, it consumes fear and births peace. And understand this clearly. Trusting God isn't passive. It's not the absence of movement, it's the presence of alignment. You still act, but you no longer act from fear. You act from faith. You don't move because you're panicked. You move because you're led. And you begin to live no longer under the tyranny of what if, but under the freedom of even if. Even if it takes longer, God is still working. Even if it looks different, God's plan is still better. Even if the path doesn't make sense, God's wisdom is deeper than your understanding. You may feel like you're walking in the dark right now, surrounded by confusion, with questions that have no answers. But don't forget, God often does his greatest work in the dark. Just because you can't see the progress doesn't mean it isn't happening. Seeds don't grow in the sunlight alone. They grow in the soil, hidden, buried, silent. So now take a deep breath, exhale the burden, let go of the tension in your shoulders, unclench the fists you didn't realize you were holding, and speak these words not as a ritual but as a release, not as performance but as surrender, not from fear but from faith. God, I give this to you, fully, completely, without condition, without delay. I give you the fear that keeps me up at night. I give you the questions that circle in my mind. I give you the outcome I cannot control. I give you the timeline I've tried to force. I give you the pressure to hold it all together. I give you the weight I was never meant to carry. I give you my future because it was always yours. I give you my past because it no longer defines me. I give you this moment because it's all I truly have. And in return, I receive your peace. I receive your rest. I receive your strength. Not because I deserve it, but because you are good and you are near. God, I believe you're working, even when I can't see it. I believe you're speaking, even in the silence. I believe you're moving, even when I feel stuck. So I won't wait for my feelings to align with my faith. I choose trust now. I choose surrender today. Let my life be a living declaration of this truth. You are enough. You are able. You are in control. You are God and I am not. So I bow, not in defeat, but in devotion. Not in weakness, but in worship. I release it all to you, every fear, every expectation, every outcome. And I receive peace, clarity, and the unshakable confidence that I am not alone. Let this truth be sealed in my soul like fire. Let it echo through every storm I face. Let it rise within me when doubt tries to return. Because now I know I was never meant to carry this alone. I was meant to carry it to you. Amen. Once you've tasted the kind of peace that flows from total trust in God, you'll never go back. You won't tolerate the weight of worry anymore. You won't trade your sacred serenity for the lies of anxiety. You'll walk through life differently. Not because the challenges disappeared, but because your confidence in God has grown deeper than the chaos around you. Each morning you'll rise and say with conviction, God, whatever this day holds, I trust you with it. And that trust? It will guard your heart like armor. It will guide your every step like a lamp in the dark. It will carry you through storms like a river carries a ship, steady, sure, unstoppable. People may not understand this peace. Some will mock it. Others will question it. But those who live by faith know this secret. The greatest wisdom is to trust God, especially when everything else tells you not to. That is the life of power. That is the life of peace. That is the life of unshakable purpose. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've finally placed everything in the hands of the one who does. So don't wait. Don't wait until the weight breaks you. Don't wait till fear robs your voice. Don't wait for the storm to crush your spirit. Choose now. Choose this moment. Declare it out loud, not in perfection but in faith. I will give it to God. I will stop worrying. Not because it's easy, but because it's holy. Because it's sacred. Because it's what your soul was designed to do. To trust. To release, to walk hand in hand with the one who never fails. And if fear still lingers, if anxiety still sits heavy on your chest, then do it trembling, do it uncertain, do it afraid, but do it anyway. Open your hands, open your heart, and whisper again and again if you have to, God, I release this to you, all of it. And say it again tomorrow, and the next day. Say it every time fear tries to return. Say it until peace becomes your new normal. Say it until trust becomes your reflex. Say it until your entire posture, your presence, declares one unshakable truth. God is enough. God is able. God is in control. So now, beloved soul, let this truth be written across your spirit like fire, like a seal, like a final promise. The weight you carry, it was never meant to be yours. The fear, the burden, the sleepless nights, the tightening of your chest, the relentless mental rehearsals. You've tried everything, you've carried it in silence, you've managed it with logic, you've buried it under busyness, but still, the ache remained. Because true peace, lasting rest, real freedom, only begins with the most powerful shift you'll ever make. Give it to God. And stop worrying, not just for today, but for good.